Hey, my name's Matthew. I raised a son who now says I make him look poor. Said it loud, right in front of his fiance's folks, on a night I paid for, in a building I own. And they all laughed. Like I was invisible. But see, what hurt most wasn't what he said it was, what he truly believed. That I was beneath him, that I didn't matter. So I smiled. Quiet. Patient. Because when the truth came out, it hit harder than any insult ever could. You want to know what I did next? I sat on the edge of my bed, hands resting on my knees, staring at the old wooden wardrobe like it was some kind of altar. That suit, it hadn't seen daylight since Rosa's funeral. And tonight, it was coming back out not for grief, but for celebration. My son's engagement, my boy, Xavier, finally settling down. I pulled the faded jacket from its hanger. The fabric was worn thin at the elbows, and the cuffs bore the faint imprint of time and toil. I pressed the lapels flat with my palm, my fingers catching on a thread loose from years of folding, storing, forgetting. The mirror above the dresser didn't lie. It never did. What looked back at me wasn't the young mechanic who used to lift engines with his bare arms. It was an old man in a tired suit, clinging to memories, and holding his breath before stepping into a room where he might not belong. But I made a promise long ago, standing by Rosa's casket, that I'd be both father and mother to Xavier. That meant showing up, even when I hadn't been invited in words. I knew what I had to do. The air smelled like old cedar and rose oil. Rosa's touch still lingered. I nodded at my reflection, pulled the door closed behind me, and headed out. The hotel stood like a giant glass monument downtown, the kind of place that didn't need to announce its wealth. It just shimmered. I caught a few looks before I even made it to the entrance. Folks in polished shoes and sleek suits, stepping out of black cars, laughing with champagne in hand, didn't know what to make of me. The doorman gave me a once-over, eyes stopping at my shoes, then drifting up to my mismatched tie. He opened his mouth, but I beat him to it. "I'm the father of the groom," I said, calm and steady. He stepped aside. Inside, it was brighter than any room I'd been in for years. Chandeliers dripped crystal. Women in gold dresses floated like stars. Men clinked glasses over polished wood bars. I scanned the room and saw Xavier tall, clean-cut, looking like he belonged to this world. His fiancée, a pretty young woman with perfect teeth and a practiced laugh, stood beside him. He hadn't seen me yet. I stood out. Not because I was loud. No, because I didn't shine like the rest. When he finally did see me, he hesitated. A smile tugged at the corners of his mouth but didn't quite land. He walked over during a toast, one of those clinking glass moments when everyone stops to look. "Dad," he said, half whisper, half stage voice. "You couldn't at least try to not look. Poor?" It landed hard. The laughter that followed was light, but I heard it. I felt it in my chest like a car backfiring too close to home. Some folks chuckled. Others sipped quietly. I didn't blink, didn't flinch. I remembered packing Xavier's lunches with the last of our groceries. I remembered working double shifts to afford his private school. I remembered pawning Rosa's jewelry to keep him enrolled. "I'm proud of you, son," I said. "That's all. No more, no less." They sat me in a quiet corner, close enough to hear, far enough not to be seen. I sipped weak tea while the speeches played out. Toasts to love, to the future, to the happy couple. I clapped when expected, nodded when polite. Then I pulled out Rosa's photo. Just a small, worn thing, edges curled, colors faded. "You'd be proud." "Maybe," I whispered, and then I smiled. Not because I was happy, but because I understood something. Right then, something cold and clear. "You just made a mistake you'll come to regret," I told myself quietly. That smile, it was a seal, a silent promise. Not of revenge, not yet, but of reckoning. I left before dessert. No one noticed. A few older women near the door gave me respectful nods. I nodded back. Stepping into the night, The city buzzed like it didn't care. The train ride home was quiet. I sat by the window, fingers curled around the metal pole, mind racing backward. His first bike. His scraped knees. His graduation cap flying into the air. Rosa's burial. The dirt hitting the casket like a drumbeat in my chest. I gave him everything, I muttered, even when I had nothing. Back home, the apartment welcomed me like a tired friend. I turned on the kitchen light, pulled out the old ledgers from the drawer. Numbers, transfers, every sacrifice laid out in ink. One line stared back at me. Monthly transfer, $9,000. Xavier T. I circled it with a red pen. My hand didn't shake. Let's see how poor I really make you look. The morning sun broke through the blinds, like it had something to prove. I sat on the edge of my bed again, elbows on knees, staring down at the floor.
It was quiet. Real quiet. Not the peaceful kind, more like the kind of quiet you get when a house finally settles after years of creaking under weight it shouldn't have held.
Xavier's words from the engagement party didn't just echo, they lingered. You couldn't at least try to not look. Poor, the sharpness of it, still sliced through my chest. I didn't flinch then, but it's the quiet moments after that do the damage. I brewed coffee slow. My hands didn't shake. Same hands that once held the back of his bike seat when he begged me not to let go. I didn't. Not then. But now? Now I had to. No message, no call, not even a breadcrumb of apology. I wasn't surprised. Hurt? Yes. Surprised? Not anymore. I opened that bottom drawer, the one I kept locked more out of habit than secrecy. Inside, ledgers, bank statements, old receipts, yellowing at the edges. For 15 years, every dollar I'd sent Xavier was recorded in there, like a ledger of love. Tuition payments, rent, flights to Cancun, deposits for wedding planners, monthly allowances steady as sunrise. Today, the pages didn't feel like proof of love. They felt like evidence in a trial only I was attending. $9,000 a month. 9. That's more than my pension. More than I spent on myself in a whole year. I ran my finger under the line, transfer, Xavier T. In red pen, I wrote beneath it, love doesn't need receipts, but it does need respect. I folded the ledger closed and stood. No shaking. No heat in my chest, just stillness. I picked up the phone and dialed the bank. The line rang twice before a woman picked up, voice bright and polite. Thank you for calling First Chicago Federal. This is Tanisha speaking. Yes, ma'am, I said, slow and calm. I need to cancel a recurring transfer, effective immediately. Of course, sir. May I ask, which one? 9,000, to Xavier Tate. A pause. Then the soft clatter of keys. Would you like to leave a reason on file, sir? I stared out the window, voice even. Because I'm done raising a man who forgot who raised him. Another pause. This one different. That's a powerful reason, sir. I smiled just a little. Powerful things often come too late. She confirmed the cancellation. I thanked her. Hung up. Sat there with the hum of the refrigerator filling the silence. The air felt thick, but there was something cleaner about it, too. Like a room just after a storm has passed. It was a few hours later when my phone lit up. Xavier. I let it ring once before answering. Dad, what the hell happened to the transfer? No greeting, no pause, just entitlement. I waited a beat before speaking. Guess I made you look poor again, huh? He went quiet. I could hear him breathing, could almost feel the shift in his tone. Are you serious right now? As serious as that joke you cracked in front of 100 people, I said. Calm. Steady. You mocked the hands that fed you, son. Now those hands are empty for you. He started to speak, but I didn't let him. You got your own money, your own woman, your own life. So live it. So you're just cutting me off? He asked. No, I said. I'm letting go. And for the first time in my life, I ended the call without apologizing. I sat back, staring at the phone in my hand. A thought drifted through. When you stop explaining yourself, that's when you start healing. I lit a candle on the mantel. Next to it, Rosa's photo. Her smile, soft and knowing, met my eyes like she'd been waiting for this. I went back to a memory I hadn't visited in years. Rosa, sitting at the kitchen table, sewing late into the night. Her fingers moving fast, but gentle. "One day," she said, "that boy gon' forget the struggle. But you don't remind him with anger. Lonzo remind him with absence." It hit different now. It felt like prophecy. I reached out, touched the edge of her picture. "I ain't angry, Rosa. I'm just done." That night, the grief I used to carry felt like it stood up and walked out. What took its place wasn't cold. It was clear. There's a difference. Later, I sat outside on the front steps of the building. Kids were laughing and chasing each other with popsicle sticks. Mr. Jenkins from 2B walked over with a couple cold beers. "You look peaceful tonight, Lonzo," he said, settling beside me. I sipped mine slow. I finally stopped mistaking guilt for love. He chuckled, nodded. "Took you long enough." We didn't say much after that. Didn't need to. The evening air did the talking. It was quiet. But this time, the quiet was mine to keep. The same evening air pressed down on my shoulders as I walked into the hotel again. Third night in a row at that same ballroom. This time, it was for some kind of gala Xavier's firm was hosting. He called it a Community Elevation Initiative. I didn't get an invitation. Imani sent a text with a digital flyer. No greeting. No, "Hope to see you there." Just a graphic. The lights in the ballroom were already too bright, too loud. Voices clinked like glasses, laughter floating up like balloons that didn't belong to me. I stepped in quiet, in slacks and a clean button-down. No suit this time. I wasn't here to impress anyone. I could feel it before anyone said a word, eyes skipping over me, brushing past like I was background noise. It wasn't loud judgment. It was that hush you get when folks don't think you belong. But one man old friend from back in the plant days, he nodded and said real low, "You look good, Mr. Tate." That whisper cut deeper than the stares. He saw me, and he also saw what they didn't. I took a seat near the back, behind a column, near the servers passing hors d'oeuvres. I didn't mind. I didn't come for champagne. The slideshow started. Big screens lit up with Xavier's face baby pictures, high school sports, Ivy League graduation, pictures I paid for, pictures I took. I leaned forward when I saw the headline, Xavier's Journey, Achievements Supported by Many. That many didn't include my name, not once. No dad, no father, not even Alonzo. Just faces of mentors, donors, Imani's family, business partners, coaches, but not me. The crowd murmured, chuckled politely. Someone near me whispered, "That's cold." I didn't move, but my chest tightened like a vice. I didn't need credit, but I wasn't invisible. At least I thought I wasn't. Then came the toast. MC tapped the mic, called Xavier to the front. He walked up smiling, all charm and confidence. He raised his glass. To my success, many say I did it all myself. But truth is, I built it. Brick by brick, applause roared. I didn't clap. I didn't flinch. I sat there, a statue of everything unsaid. I could have stood, could have shouted every receipt. Every night I worked 2 shifts, just to pay for his college. But I didn't. That kind of pain don't need noise. It needs memory. After the crowd dispersed, I slipped through a side hallway, one of those quiet back corridors used by staff. I saw him there, adjusting his cufflinks, still basking in the glow. He looked up, half smile on his face, like he thought I came to congratulate him. I spoke first. "You erased me in your story. Why should I stay silent now?" His smile faltered. "It wasn't meant to hurt you." I stepped closer, slow and even. Silence can wound people, and I'm not your footnote. He didn't answer. I turned and walked away. Not with anger, with clarity, with something final in my step. Near the kitchen door, a young server bumped a tray. I caught a glass mid-air without thinking. She looked up, surprised. "Even shadows serve light, sir," she said, voice barely above a whisper. That stayed with me. A stranger saw what my own son couldn't, or wouldn't. I left the hotel through the back. The air outside was crisp, streetlights buzzing like old neon memories, my hands in my pockets, collar up against the wind. I didn't take the train. I walked. Past shuttered shops, past stoops with laughter I once knew. The rhythm of my shoes on pavement sounded like resolve. My mind wandered. Back to when Xavier was 5, holding my hand so tight in that parking lot. Back to Rosa, her head on my shoulder the night we signed the mortgage. Back to a version of me I barely recognized. Hopeful, giving, full of light. I stopped under a street lamp, looked up, said to no one, "You stood when you were erased." That's strength. When I got home, I didn't turn on the lights. Right away, I sat on the edge of the bed, like that morning. But this time, I didn't feel broken. Tomorrow, you'll hear my name. I walked back into the ballroom like nothing had happened. The confrontation in that hallway still lingered on my skin, but my steps stayed steady. The chatter, the light, the shimmer, it all kept spinning like I didn't exist. A few faces looked at me and quickly turned away. Others offered small nods of pity. I didn't want pity. I wanted my name. The MC's voice rang through the room. "Now, we'd like to take a moment for special thank yous." I took a breath, deep and slow. Thank you to the Carters for their generosity and guidance, to mentors, to friends who've become family, to our village. My chest felt tighter with every line. Where is my name in the gratitude I deserve? I turned toward the bar to steady myself, but caught the tail end of something said too low for the stage. Out in the side hallway, 2 men were speaking just loud enough to be careless. "Is that Xavier's dad? Didn't see him mentioned. Maybe he's just here for show." That one hit me like a cold palm across the cheek. I froze mid-step. They weren't cruel. They were casual. Like my absence was a footnote they'd expected. I could have said something. Walked up and told them who paid Xavier's first tuition bill in cash when the loan fell through. Who stayed up nights, fixing engines, sending money, keeping food on his table even after Rosa passed. But I didn't. I backed into the shadows of that hallway. Let them pass by, sipping their wine, knowing nothing. Sometimes, silence ain't weakness. Sometimes, it's a test for them, not me. I stepped back into the ballroom just in time for the last of the thank yous. And to all the hands and hearts that helped us get here, we say thank you. Imani turned toward me half-smile, polite, unsure. Xavier didn't even look my way. I clapped, with everyone else. I clapped like I wasn't the man who paid for the tux he was wearing. I clapped like I didn't miss Rosa every day so he wouldn't have to miss anything. Inside, my stomach churned. My jaw locked so tight, it ached. I remembered the nights I worked straight through until morning. The times I said no to myself just so he'd hear yes. I remembered every quiet act of love, every unnoticed sacrifice, all erased in a single list of names that did not include mine. I walked out onto the terrace, needed air, needed something real. The cold met me fast, slapped the heat out my chest. The skyline stretched wide, distant lights blinking like they had more memory than the folks inside. I leaned on the railing, palms down. "I gave you the stage," I said low, "to nobody, but you forgot who built it." I stood out there longer than I meant to. Folks walked by behind me. Some laughed, some looked right through me. Then a young caterer, barely 20, eyes soft, came up beside me holding a folded cloth. "Sir, you drop this," she said, handing me my napkin. It was monogrammed. A gift from Rosa. Small letters, at. That girl didn't know my name, but she saw it. She saw me. I nodded. "Thank you." I folded the napkin and slipped it in my coat pocket. That small moment? It held more truth than the whole ballroom. I walked back inside. My water still sat on the side table, untouched. Across the room, Xavier was laughing with some man in a gray blazer, shaking hands, charming, living out the image I helped him build. I stood there watching, not bitter clear. My mind didn't wander. It locked in. Quiet, but sharp. If they won't say my name, I will become the name they can't forget. I straightened my back, took a sip from that glass, and returned to the celebration. When I stepped back into the ballroom from the terrace, it was like nothing had shifted. The music played, glasses clinked, people laughed, like they hadn't just watched a man disappear in plain sight. My steps were slow, deliberate. I didn't expect fanfare. I just wanted to reclaim my place, a space that shouldn't have needed reclaiming to begin with. Sergio, the photographer I'd seen bouncing around earlier, motioned for folks to clear space near the dance floor. "Let's get a shot of the couple," he called. People cleared, and Xavier and Amani stood smiling like magazine models under the soft spotlight. I walked forward, not rushing, just making my way toward them. I stood behind them, waiting, watching. Sergio glanced at me then, with a quick hand motion and an apologetic smile, said, "Sir, can you step to the left a bit? You're in the background." I didn't move at first. My feet held the floor. Then he gestured again, firmer this time. I stepped out of the frame. They erased me again. The next moment, Xavier and Imani called for family group shots. The DJ adjusted the lights, and someone rounded up the parents. I stood quietly, watching who they called. Imani's parents were pulled forward first, then a few aunts, uncles, cousins. I started walking forward slow, dignified. That's when security slid in beside me. Not aggressive, just suggestive. "Sir, this way please," he said, directing me toward the back of the group. Another guest behind me muttered, "They want the image clean. Clean." I stood in the second row, barely visible, shoulders of taller men blocking me from view. The camera clicked. Once, twice, a dozen flashes. And just like that, I became a shadow in their memory book. I whispered to myself, "You're the architect, Alonzo." But even architects can be left out of the blueprints when the house is done. Dinner was announced. I followed the line toward the tables, only to find my place setting tucked in the farthest corner next to someone's cousin's old pastor, a man who barely spoke English and chewed, with his mouth open. As I cut into overcooked chicken breast, the MC returned to the mic. "Inside your programs, you'll find a printed thank you note from Xavier and Imani, celebrating everyone who made this day possible." I opened the pamphlet, slowly. Names filled the page. Imani's parents, business sponsors, Xavier's mentors, even a coach from his high school track team. But not mine. My eyes scanned the page twice, 3 times. Nothing. Then, across the room, near the exit where staff posted venue info, a printed breakdown of the event's costs caught my eye. I walked over, folded pamphlet still in hand. At the bottom of the laminated bill, in clean black font, event sponsored by Xavier and Imani, catering courtesy of A. Tate. My name, on the bill, not on the honor, on the bill. It landed like a slap across the chest. I thought of the money I'd sent month after month. The nights I worked late, shifts to afford tuxes, DJ deposits, and photo booths. Years ago, I fixed lights in Xavier's school gym when they couldn't afford repairs, never asked for praise. But tonight, that silence had a price. I tucked the pamphlet in my coat pocket, walked over to where Imani stood near the bar. She looked up, smile ready. "Mr. Tate," she said, having a good time. "I came to congratulate you both," I said, calm. She nodded, pleased. "But before I go," I added, "you left me out of your names, but not out of your expenses." Her smile faded. She blinked. "We meant no harm," she offered, too quick. "Harm's not always about intent," I said. "When you don't mean harm, you still get to be honest. You didn't mention me because you didn't want to. That's fine. But don't act like it didn't cost you." I didn't wait for her answer. I just walked away, leaving my words planted like seeds she wouldn't forget. Back at my table, I sat for a moment and drifted. I remembered when Xavier was 10 and wanted to go to a summer camp that cost more than a mortgage payment. I worked overtime 2 weeks straight, slept in my car during breaks. Rosa said, "Don't expect thank yous, Lonzo. Let your acts speak." But now I saw silence don't speak when no one's listening. Dinner ended. People clapped again. I nodded to a few familiar faces and made my quiet exit. The train home was near empty. I sat by the window, coat still buttoned, pamphlet in hand. I read the thank you list again. Every line. Noted who made the cut. They've hidden my name, I thought. But they can't hide what I built. As the train rattled into the station, I stood. The boundary wasn't just drawn tonight. It was carved. After most of the crowd moved on from the dinner tables, I stayed behind a moment. I stood near a glass case by the ballroom entrance. Inside was the printed expense breakdown, a showpiece of pride, I suppose, for them. My name stared back at me, not in gold font or fancy cursive. Just clean, plain print. Catering and Event Planning by A. Tate Enterprises. My company. My funds. My hands. Quiet, but present. Next to that display, mounted on a little easel, sat the thank you list. Names layered in paragraphs. Parents, donors, foundational pillars. No mention of Tate. I didn't tear it down. Didn't even sigh. I closed the glass gently, walked away with my hands in my pockets, but fire in my chest. They'll pay for hiding my name, I thought. Not with vengeance. With truth. That's when it clicked. This wasn't erasure. It was proof. They needed my work, but not my presence. That told me everything. I stood in a far corner during the mingling. People laughed, took selfies. The DJ slid back into old-school funk. And then I heard it, a low voice. Not meant for me, but not hidden either. "I'm ashamed they forgot him," someone said. I turned. The man speaking was older. Early 50s, maybe. Sharp suit. The kind of face I'd seen before years back, when I fixed a leaky roof on a youth center for free. Same man. I didn't think he remembered, but he did. His friend leaned in to hush him, but the man stepped away and came toward me. "Mr. Tate," he said. His voice was soft, but steady. "I just wanted you to know. I saw you then, and I see you now." I looked him in the eye, just long enough to register the truth there. He meant it. "Sometimes seeing is an act of justice," I said, quietly. "Thank you." He nodded once, patted my shoulder gently, and walked away. I didn't know his name, but that didn't matter. That was the first moment of the night I felt seen. Later, someone tapped a mic near the dessert bar. A guest, nervous, holding a glass, cleared his throat. "I can't stand to stay silent while we pretend." That's as far as he got. The MC swooped in fast, laughing like it was a toast gone sideways. "Let's keep the love going, y'all. DJ, bring it back." The music surged. The crowd chuckled. But I saw the man's face, his jaw clenched, his glass still raised. That unfinished confession hung there like smoke. I stepped forward. Not rushing, just moving closer. But I stopped myself before saying anything. I knew that space, the no man's land between speaking your truth and becoming the villain in someone else's curated memory. I let it hang. Instead, I found Xavier alone at a cocktail table, drink in hand, eyes low. I approached, not hostile, just unpretending. "Even your guests whisper my name when you won't," I said low. He looked up, startled. Couldn't find words. "You don't need to speak for me," I continued. "Let your actions speak this time. Loud enough to hear." He blinked. No defense came. I left that seed right there with him, unburied, unblinking. Walking away, my mind drifted not to tonight, but years ago. Rosa, sitting in her chair, stitching into that old quilt she loved. Sometimes loud voices drown worth, she'd told me. Speak where they can't ignore. She'd embroidered it too, right into the fabric. Let truth be your voice when silence fails. That quilt's folded in my attic now. I hadn't thought of it in years. But the words lived in my bones. My silence hadn't been weakness. It had been waiting, watching, a strategy sharpening in shadows. I moved back into the ballroom. The lights had dimmed a little. Xavier stood with a mic, offering closing words to the night. I didn't take the mic. I didn't need the stage. I stepped into view behind him, centered in the light, not flinching. People noticed. A few heads turned. Eyes found mine, some confused, some startled, some quietly knowing. I stood still. No drama, no outburst, just presence. They tried to write me out. But I wasn't gone. I woke before the Sunday. Not because of nerves, no. Those had burned off days ago. I just couldn't sit still with silence anymore. My body was calm, but something in my chest had already made the decision. I brewed coffee, sat at the kitchen table, opened my ledger. One of those old habits Rosa never questioned. Everything was documented. Dates, transfers, receipts, a lifetime of quiet deposits. I unlocked my banking app, scrolled to the monthly standing order, $9,000 to Xavier Tate. I looked at it for a long beat. Not bitter, not angry, just done. I canceled the transfer. The app pinged, confirmed. That was it. 9,000 gone from his lifelike breath in winter air. I leaned back. The silence didn't feel hollow anymore. It felt earned. About 2 hours later, my phone buzzed. A text. "Did you cancel the transfer?" I typed back one word, "Yes." The phone rang instantly. "Dad, what are you doing?" Answering a question with a fact, I said. "This is petty," he snapped. "You're trying to punish me publicly." I didn't raise my voice. Didn't flinch. "I've been punished privately for years. You'll survive one line item being missing. You don't get to just..." "I do." I paused. "I just did." I ended the call. That afternoon, dinner came. The room buzzed with a strange politeness everyone too aware of last night's shift. They thought I'd slipped back into the shadows. They thought wrong. I stood near the table and waited for the right moment. Imani was showing off the skyline from the penthouse windows. People nodded, smiled, sipped wine. I stepped forward. "Beautiful view, isn't it?" I said, calm. Heads turned. "By the way, that penthouse? It's mine." I pulled a folded envelope from my coat, held it up. I thought some clarity was due. The room shifted. Faces tensed. I laid the documents gently on the table title deed. Ownership transfer. Clear. Legal. Dated. Xavier looked like someone had unplugged him. "What are you talking about?" he stammered. "I'm talking about truth," I said. "You've been living in a space you never paid for, funded by a man you chose to erase." Guests murmured. Some looked down. Others at me. I didn't need to shout. The truth echoed just fine. Xavier's voice cracked. "This is a manipulation. He's twisting things." I turned to the room. "Delusional people don't sign deeds in silence and leave receipts." Imani looked caught between seats on a sinking ship. The air thickened, but I didn't budge. Not for guilt, not for performance. And that's when I saw it. Xavier, scanning the room, realizing no one was defending him. He wasn't just losing face. He was losing the room. That quiet victory, no applause, no mic, was the one I'd waited for. Later that night, after it all settled, I sat alone in the penthouse lounge. The lights low, the city humming below, the same room they used as a backdrop for smiles that never mentioned me. I thought about Rosa again. Her needlework. That old phrase stitched into the lining of a blueprint we drafted together. True power isn't loud, it's steadfast. I had asked her, one night, to sew our initials into that blueprint, just ours. Just once. And now that quiet act had come full circle. The penthouse was mine, not out of spite, out of rightful design. The silence around me didn't feel cold anymore. It felt earned. My phone buzzed again. A headline. Local scandal. Father cancels monthly stipend to newlywed son. I let it sit on the screen for a while. Then I smiled. slow and full. "That's how you make them see your name," I whispered to no one, and leaned back, ready for what came next. Sunday dawned heavy, the kind of morning that doesn't leave room for pretending. They called the gathering a family brunch, a chance to patch up what was torn. But patches don't restore bones, they just hide the break. I arrived in a dark, well-fitted suit. Calm, but not soft. Eyes shifted as I entered. Smiles flickered like lights about to go out. Xavier stepped forward, voice smooth. "Dad, glad you could make it." I nodded. "Wouldn't miss it. After all, I pay for most of it." That one line cracked the air. The room sat on edge. Forks paused. Xavier began his toast, new beginnings, family love, unity. He spoke with polish. When he finished, I rose. No flourish, no show. I just stood. "You talk about love," I said, quiet but firm. "But love without respect is just noise." I placed a folded document on the table, a crisp copy of a lease. "This venue," I said, "is leased to A. Tate, paid in my name." The shift was instant. Gasps, stares, tension. Imani's eyes flickered. Xavier's laugh died midway. "Dad, what is that?" I turned to Imani's father, steady voice. "Sir, did you know your company's been sending rent checks to my account every month for this building?" He froze. Silence thickened. I pressed. "While you flaunt wealth, your check has been paying for his comfort under my roof." The room went still. Phones came out. Cameras glinted. Xavier's face drained. Imani covered her mouth. He jumped at me, anger in his voice. "You're humiliating me." I stared him down. "No, son. You did that yourself." Chaos erupted. Guests murmured. Imani ran off crying. Her father glared at Xavier, hurt in his eyes. Xavier stuttered, tried to claw for control. "You're vindictive. You've turned people against me." I didn't budge. Truth doesn't need revenge. It stands on its own. Silence returned, heavier. I reached in my pocket and drew out the napkin, the same embroidered linen from their engagement. I placed it beside the rent check. "Here's your symbol of family," I said softly. "Borrowed, forgotten, unpaid." Heads bowed, faces flushed. I picked up my coat. Before stepping toward the door, I looked back. "Next time," I said, "pay your debts in respect, not money." I walked out. The door opened to sunlight. Reporters waited. I raised a hand to stop them, then kept walking. Voices erupted behind me, but I was already gone. My footsteps on the pavement echoed finality, closure. The morning after felt quieter than usual. Not silent, just calm. That kind of stillness that comes when something heavy's been set down. I found myself back at that little cafe on the corner near 79th, the one with the crooked blinds and the strongest black coffee on the block. I took my usual seat by the window. No paper, no phone. Just sipped slow and watched the neighborhood stretch into its Sunday. A young man, probably no more than 22, leaned over on his way out. "Saw you on Facebook, Mr. Matthews," he said. "You a real one." I gave him a nod. Didn't need a conversation. Recognition wasn't what I came for. But truth travels, even when you walk quiet. As I finished my cup, the owner, Miss Teresa, waved me off. "On the house. Today." She smiled. "We see you. No parade. Just respect." And somehow, that hit deeper than applause ever could. When I got home, the hallway smelled faintly of fried onions from downstairs. Same as always. But what wasn't always wedged under my door was a thick manila envelope. No name on it, but I knew the handwriting before I even opened it. My son's. Slanted. Pressed hard. Inside, a letter, folded careful, like it meant something. No "Dear Dad," no "I'm sorry," just his truth, laid out in ink. "I didn't know what you built," it read. "I only saw what I wanted to take." I sat down, let it sink. He went on, "You didn't raise me to be blind. I just closed my eyes when it suited me. I disrespected more than your name. I dismissed your journey, and that's on me." Tucked inside the envelope was a check. Not for repayment, just acknowledgement. No amount could fix what was cracked. But it said, "I see it now. I don't expect forgiveness." The letter closed. "But I needed to respect you the right way." Later that day, I sat on the back porch with Curtis. Old friend from church, man who's buried more wisdom than most ever speak. I handed him the letter. He read it slow, nodding. "Sometimes," he said, "our sons gotta walk through fire before they learn to build anything worth standing in." That stuck with me. Curtis leaned back. "You broke the chain, brother." We toasted. Not with wine, with lemonade and silence. And I found myself saying, being rich ain't just dollars, it's about how deep your roots grow. He raised his glass. Now that's wealth. That Sunday, just before sundown, I heard a knock. Same sound I'd heard 1,000 times over the years. But this one wasn't like the rest. I opened the door. Xavier stood there. No bag, no speech ready, just him. I didn't say a word, just motioned to the porch swing. Wee Saturday. No music, no birds even. Just that kind of silence you don't rush. He started to speak. I held up my hand. "I ain't need an apology, son. I needed you to open your eyes." He did. Water welled, but he didn't wipe it. He didn't have to. He sat there, jaw clenched like he was holding back more than tears. I placed my hand on his shoulder. "You're my son." That never stopped. He nodded. Just once. But that nod carried years. For the first time since he was a teenager, we talked. Not about bills or birthdays. About life. His fears. My mistakes. What it means to be a man when no one hands you a guidebook. Midweek, he called again. Asked how he could help with the community center, my little project over on Ashland Avenue. "Show up," I told him. "That's the beginning." And he did. He painted walls with kids who didn't know his name, served beans and cornbread to folks who'd never been to brunch, cleaned toilets without complaint, and most of all, he listened. Not to respond, just to understand. The church ladies noticed. Miss Gwen said, "He looked like his daddy now," then smiled. "In the heart. Ain't much sweeter than that." That evening, I sat on my porch again. Same seat, same breeze. The street was alive. Kids chased each other like joy had no curfew. Parents yelled soft warnings from stoops. My story had gone viral, they said. But none of that mattered now. What mattered was right in front of me. My circle. Not perfect, but healing. A legacy that don't need noise to stand strong. And peace, not handed to me, earned.